Recording in progress.
Can we help you do this or you don't?
No, I got it.
Okay, time is now 12:10, and I'm concluding the executive session. Following participants in the session were trustee Dennis Pazlusny, trustee Dana Oglesby, trustee Adam Kinney, clerk Ariel Blackwell, treasurer Kim Gossen, and me, Mayor Benjamin Byer. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask you to state your concerns now. Hearing none, the next agenda item is a motion to officially close the executive session.
Make a motion, we officially close the executive session.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think we did that, okay,
I think we did pretty good.
all right. Just practice for. We're gonna move on to G, which is this black mold alert. I don't think there's much we can do, but
Can you tell me about it?
yeah. It's in your binder, but there was this apartment here, has a black mold issue. And I think a lot of the residents as well as businesses are gonna move out because they're under health reasons. We were wondering if there was anything that we could do to give notice or you know, they're basically don't care, the owners, they're, I think, trying to sell it.
Who's the
And
current owners?
It's the Beards.
Okay.
Do the Beards live here?
Sometimes they have, you know, they're farmers in California,
Okay.
and
This isn't town property though.
it's private property.
Okay.
I don't know if there's much we can do.
Yeah, so they're asking if we can, give notice to the residents?
No,
Or,
the residents are asking us to give notice to the owners that there's a health concern and whether we have any kind of jurisdiction or purview into the, you know, rights of those residents and I think they're worried that, you know, there's a lot of people in there that have housing. It's like probably one of the biggest
yeah,
housing areas we have here, and, you know, people are feeling like their health is compromised.
so if I'm reading this correctly, one of their tenants had this lab report done.
Correct.
Okay.
It's also a building that a lot of unsuspecting public have probably been in and out of from residents to people who come in our community during the summer months and have gone in and out of that building. I think at the least, we should notify, if they haven't already been notified, that this condition exists. I mean, the owner should be notified the condition exists and possibly even have some research in our municipal code.
Yeah,
So I mean, this says lab analysis report, and I don't mean to be dramatic, but an unhappy tenant could make this. So we
well,
can't
it is
come out,
it is an unhappy tenant.
well, we can't come out and say, this is not official, this is from a tenant. So we would need to know more before we start saying to a realtor or a prospective buyer or any other residents that there's black mold in that building. This could be,
More cautious.
this could be fabricated.
Well, as I recall, some of the complaints that came out unofficially, after one of the heavy rains, there was water leakage into the building. That probably caused the situation,
according to a tenant.
according to tenants.
Okay.
Not just one,
Uh-huh.
and, but it is, I guess you call it hearsay.
So we probably don't have any jurisdiction or ordinance that says we can
Other
condemn a
than,
building.
other than we've received complaints, we've received formal complaints, is that true?
Have those been sent
That's
to
legit.
the,
No,
The
because I think
beards?
this is the formal, this is essentially a formal thing.
okay. So I guess we can send the complaints to the Beards
Uh-huh.
and,
Be really weird if they haven't received it yet.
yeah. And, I mean, I don't know,
I would say that maybe we just write a short letter stating that, you know, we've received complaints
Yeah.
from residents of our town, which are, you know, our citizenry, and that, you know, your building is infested, they've done, you know, just all the details, and that we send it to them, and that's about all we can do.
at least for now, I mean,
We can't condemn
I
it,
could see,
can we?
I don't know.
like, we don't have, you don't know if we have the power to do so.
Do we have
I don't
that
think we do.
unsafe building?
We would have to take it upon ourselves to do more technical research, and I don't know if I wanna get there yet.
They could certainly go to the newspaper.
Maybe the tendency.
Yeah. That's what I would encourage them to do.
Yeah, I mean, besides sending the people who own the building, what we have received. I mean, it does feel like right now the ball is in their court to do something about it, and
I don't think there's nothing wrong with letting them know that we know.
yeah. And that, you know, in whatever language that we're like keeping an eye on the situation.
Do we? Benji, are you clear on the unsafe building ordinance?
I was gonna look at it.
Because we could certainly cite that in the letter.
Problem is, again, we would probably need to get our own proof, right?
Fine, yeah, totally, but even just to throw the words out there,
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
but
In
only
the
if
letter.
it's applicable.
I would say in the letter, you could say, you know, something like, we're aware of the possibility that it's an unsafe building, and that we do have a municipal code against that.
Especially in a commercial.
And we can give them a time limit, you know, or something, I don't know, we might be able to say, you know, if you have proof otherwise, it would be. I don't know if you can do that.
We've received several complaints from your tenants that there's been. Some evaluation that there's been proof that there's been, or shown that there's been mold found.
And maybe we
And we'd like
recommend,
you to address this issue.
yeah, I would recommend that you, you know, come get your own data. And,
Do you want the address of the Beards?
yes. I mean, it is, you know, like Benji was saying, it is like business and housing, and if they want, you know, even if they wanna sell it, they're not gonna be able to sell it with all, you know, if this data is true. You're gonna have to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean. It's almost like, maybe Adam's correct that the unsafe building is probably the only way we could go, but I don't know if we should. I mean, we would have to, how do we pursue it to get actual 100% proof that it's unsafe?
Right. I don't know.
Yeah, we would have to pay for our own independent. You know, in the report, it says. You know, recommends you have a qualified indoor air quality professional perform an on-site mold assessment. Blah, et cetera, et cetera.
And the town board used to say, I don't know if it's right or not, but that we can form or act as our own. Board of Public Health and Safety.
It's under. Sorry, one second, it's under Beard Living Trust, P O Box 547. Custom, 547.
PO Box?
Yeah, I think if you write the trust, they have to, by law, notify the owners of the trust.
How do you spell their name?
DEARD, Living Trust.
The executor of the trust. That's
So what were
the,
you saying, I don't know about, having a,
The town board used to say that we could act as or form our own Board of Public Health
Hmm.
and Safety or something.
okay,
We might probably ask the attorney.
okay,
If we can form that board,
Yeah, and if we can condemn a building for black mold
right?
versus it's not construction or engineering concerns.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly how we would wanna go about it, maybe, we need to like reach out to the tenants and the renters there. And have a conversation with them about, like, what do they wanna see happen? I'm sure none of them actually want the building to be condemned. And have to go find new housing and new places for their businesses, but
that started with,
that was started already.
Yep.
Okay,
I mean, where businesses have moved out. And getting other locations.
oh, you need from here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and that's bad for town.
that's bad.
Not good, right?
A huge condemned.
I think ultimately we
Like
are
the one in
responsible for the
corner.
health, safety and welfare of the entire community and our visitors.
I mean, if
so all I'm
if
saying
it's
is that,
mitigatable, then it would be ideal for the owners to mitigate what's happening. And
You know, it's a nice looking building, I'm surprised.
It's got a lot of karma, but
Really,
yeah, cause there was a restaurant there that burned down. Kim can tell you all about it.
overcooked mistakes.
So it was the Roadkill Cafe.
nice. So, yeah, I guess maybe first step, let's send the Beards the letter, let's talk to Seth about what our capacity is as a board. And, I don't know, maybe it's even just a board member or Benji or me can go and talk to some folks and just see where they're at with it all.
well, I know that one resident is gonna be telling all the other residents, basically. With his mold report,
Okay,
and so kind of like, this is your chance to. Move out,
right,
because you're affecting health, however. If we can do anything, let's just bring it up with Seth when we get the chance at the end of. He usually has us, allows us questions, so let's just bring it up then.
If I understand, you're gonna talk to the attorney, but also write the letter to the owner saying that black mold's been found over there. Recommending that they investigate it themselves and take action, and am I referencing the unsafe building ordinance or not?
Yeah, I would reference it.
And include the black mold analysis as
Yeah.
well.
But I wouldn't say black mold's been found.
Just say there was a report of black
Yeah.
mold.
Complaints, yeah.
and did we get official complaints about the leaks in the roof and water coming into the building?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't have anything about.
Is that something you wanna let Mateo kind of research over?
it would just might be a nice thing to include, if we had that, it would be nice to include it, but if we don't, then.
I mean. Yeah. I feel like we're out of our purview on leaky roof.
We are, I feel like we're out of our purview with a lot of it until we get back with Seth, but it does it is unnerving to think that this building could become this huge condemned
When,
Be like
piece
Hawaii.
of crap right in the middle of town that should be servicing a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's how many business licenses?
Yeah. I
and
mean,
if
that's
it was left to
huge.
deteriorate, everyone moved out and left to deteriorate even further.
There's
then
a deteriorated and unsafe building code 12-1-250.
I feel like that's, I mean, potentially when we would, we'll talk to Seth, but that's potentially when we could get involved, is when everybody does have to move out. And then it becomes just a vacant nuisance, and then, unfortunately, it might have to be until then, until we can actually like force them to do something.
Maybe it'll be sooner.
Yeah, hopefully they try to do something about it.
Just see what it's about this time.
I feel a mountain of the house of black mold.
Yeah. So it says under 12-1-250. Abandoned, unfinished, deteriorated, and unsafe buildings, it shall be unlawful and constitutes a nuisance for any person to maintain any building or structure in the town which is or will be used for commercial purposes, which has been abandoned, unfinished, allowed to become deteriorated and unsafe, or which becomes a haven for vagrants, transients, or which harbors or encourages unlawful activity, criminal activity. And that's pretty much, and a responsibility of owner, occupant, or agent. Where a nuisance exists upon private property and is the outgrowth of the unusual, natural, or unnecessary, or necessary use of the property, the owner therefore, or its agents are declared the author thereof, but where any nuisance arises from the unusual use to which, no, that's not.
I thought we had a dangerous versus abandoned.
Remember we added that because, and they're supposed to have 14 days to update of that. Um. On authorization by the town clerk, mayor, or town code code enforcement officer, any nuisance found to exist causes such imminent danger to life, limb, property, or health as to require immediate abatement. Any such nuisance may be summarily abated by action of the town clerk, mayor, or town code enforcement officer as may be directed by the town clerk. Complaints of nuisances may be made to the town clerk whenever possible. Any complaint shall state the nature of the nuisance, the location, including street address, the name of the owner, agent, blah, blah, blah. And then we do have the right to entry if we have to.
I just think it'd be worth including that in the letter and, not as
12-2-250, 12-1-250. And then nuisance and then Article 2 is nuisance responsibility and abatement. Okay, is that good for now? Next, we have, remove the dark sky committee from our committee list.
I make the motion, we remove the dark sky committee from town finance,
Town committee list.
town committee list.
A second one motion.
More discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We're gonna do one more thing, fire mitigation. Bait contract, so we hired Allison as the administrator, we hired Melody as a manager. But I realized that we didn't really have any basic contracts with them, like, and I don't know. If we wanna have like a subcontract or a contractor agreement with them. And whether you can go from one year to the next with that and how that, carries over. But basically, we were looking up general contracts that just. Part of it is that whatever, they kind of declare their own hours. But we need to have something that just says that they get paid X amount of money
Mhm,
per hour for the grant itself.
mhm.
And so I was gonna kind of ask them to come up with something and then present it to us.
Approach.
So, I don't think it's a big deal. It's just nice to have something on file
Yeah.
instead of just being a verbal contract.
So,
So we'll work on that.
I reached out to Allison and I told her that I had 2 of those contracts for her and Melody to fill out, and if they could fill them out, give them back to us for review,
Okay.
then we could. Sign them on our end.
Okay, and then the only other thing was that when we get to a point where we're doing, the mitigation contract for hiring somebody, then we definitely wanna have that on paper and we wanna have their insurance on file because they're doing actual work in town.
mhm.
So that's the only thing. So I give you a quick update on that fire mitigation grant. Because it's FEMA, they have all these restrictions. If you do a state grant for mitigation, there's far less restrictions. But the restrictions are around the spotted owl in this area. And so really, you're only allowed to work from September 1st to January 31st. Which kind of, because of weather and all this stuff, it's really difficult to figure out exactly how you're gonna do that work.
Mhm.
So what we're trying to do, what our strategy is, we went and had a meeting with the fire chief for, the POA, because Ben has done a number of these FEMA grants, and his strategy was, as soon as you feel like you don't have enough time, you should file for an extension on the grant. And then, not only did we feel like we don't have enough time, but the original map that FEMA approved was done by, Adam Moore, who didn't really go onto the ground and actually look at what we could do and what we couldn't do. So when Leslie had Adam do the map, there was no communication between the people who, us, who wanted the grant, and him, who just created a map on Google Earth, basically, and overlaid it. So what ends up happening is you have all this private area that we don't have permission to go onto.
Mhm.
Some of it we can, but you end up getting a grant for 90 acres of land that cannot be accessed.
Right.
So maybe 40 of it can be accessed, and another 50 of it can't be. So what I did was I went in there and made another map that was much more accurate, and then that map would take some time for FEMA to reapprove it. So what we decided was, we were gonna go with the old map. And we realized that it's not really possible. So now we have to file an extension with the new map. And it's just gonna push everything out a little bit, but it makes it so that at least we now have like what we wanna do as well as the time to do it. And it's just a game that you're playing with FEMA because they don't have anybody here besides us. Picking out the areas that can be mitigated or should be mitigated, so it's kind of a game with them, unfortunately,
Do you need support in that?
as far as.
I don't know.
Not really, I think Allison's just gonna go and do it, she's gonna file for the extension. And we're hoping that maybe they even give us more money, because it's a little light on the money thing as well. But my map that I created is has all the acreage, it's much more detailed, it includes the cemetery. And things like that, so we can actually get work done out there on this grant, which is really good.
Cool.
Does it include like a buffer between the Baca and town?
So there's one section that's up by, so there's 40 acres that are bordering the town directly to the west of us. That I think Warren Stevens has control over, and according
No,
to,
but a buffer over here, like if fire's coming from the Baca.
from the Baca. The only thing would be track one, we could do some mitigation, possibly the charter school if they give us permission. So yes, I mean, I put that on the map. We just gotta kind of keep up with the permissions, yes. And then what Ben said was that most likely the fire, if there was a fire up in like North Crestone, that it could wrap around the mountains and come up from that direction. So we're trying to get Nick Chambers on board. There's some land up here that we own that we're obviously on board for. So, and BLM's already been done, it's just like, we can't really go on to that.
But if I may, there's kind of a couple approaches to fire. One is if it's like traveling through grass, coming to town, coming from the bucket. The other, which is actually kind of in some ways more common, is that you have a house fire that spreads within the city. And when I look at the neighborhood above me, especially areas like Hemlock and Pine Street, some of those areas are so dense, like Pine Street that comes across North Pine Street. It's a single track, and on each side of the road, it's so gnarly and so overgrown that it's not even, you can't do two-way traffic, and there's, it's a 60-foot road right away, but so there could be more mitigation, but if a fire should start up in there as an internal fire within town, this is where we could see real dangers in your neighborhood. A house fire could easily spread within town, and people having a chimney fire that gets out of hand is a bigger threat than, say, a lightning strike, is within an internal spread of a fire. And I think we really need to look at where houses are in the density of what would happen with one fire. And access, as I mentioned with, Pine Street, access for emergency vehicles, it's a single track. And it would be those kind of neighborhoods where you wanna make sure you're not just stopping a fire, but improving, emergency service access.
Right. Yeah, and one thing we discussed, and Melody is really good at writing up these reports, or not really reports, but this like action plans and stuff. And one thing that we had talked about was that the FEMA grant, we kind of want to just get through this grant because we're not going to be able to do everything we want to do. But she's got a whole plan for evacuation, and I mean, there's like a lot of cool things that she's kind of bringing to the table, and she'd be willing to help us write grants in the future that are a little more easy to.
Well, and the conversation I had with Daniel when he was looking at this tree, was with this grant of saying how much money was actually available to go to pay people, say per acreage, was really low for the work that needed to be done. There just wasn't enough money to be able to do the kind of work.
Right. FEMA is, I tell you, this grant is really, really tricky. When Leslie applied for it, I don't think she knew how tricky it was. There is some stuff though that we're gonna do where if you have 90 acres that you have to do, and say you went out and did your own mitigation, you can turn in your hours. And we get compensated, plus we actually get those acres as part of the 90.
But we have private property?
Private property and everything, so any mitigation we can, what we're gonna do as part of our education is gonna be asking people what they've already done, cause I've done a lot around my house, you've done a lot.
So the other thing that I'm looking at is this particular tree, that's a beetle kill. And he came and he worked the bark, and it looks like there was beetles they'd already flown. I had a long-standing agreement with IKEA that I could do mitigation in the surrounding roads.
Yeah.
When I talked with Daniel, he asked me, do you have that in writing?
It isn't right.
And I said, no, so I would like to be able to get something. He said, if the mayor signed something that said I had permission, I need to have.
It's in our code. I looked for it, it says that you're allowed to mitigate public land around your property.
So there's a written something I could get for that,
Yes.
okay, good, because, yeah, I
And
wanna just remove
What we'll
this.
do is we'll ask you specifically how much time you put in. And then we, like I said, we can use that. It could, you get like a certain amount of money taken off that 5.2% that we would owe. So ideally, we can cover that whole 5.2% with
Okay.
volunteer work. So it's gonna be part of, we're gonna create a form that people fill out.
Awesome.
Well,
and then-
that's really good, because I know a lot of homeowners, you know, are doing just exactly that, doing some mitigation.
I'll bet between, on Hemlock, South Hemlock, between Ellis and Ransom and myself, we probably have a pickup truck a week,
Yeah,
it's all summer long,
right.
that we've been pulling out.
And all that, I mean, like I said, we really just wanna get through this grant so we can do other things, because this grant is just so restricting. We just wanna do as much as we can, but not expect that this grant's gonna really, you know, it's gonna help, but it's the real grants that we wanna get are the state grants, cause they just don't have those restrictions. So the other thing that came up, I walked for a few hours, I walked with Melody around the town, and we realized that there is some serious property owner encroachment happening, especially up in the northwest corner of town. If you guys have ever been up there, there's two roads that, you know, it's where our corner meet. One road is almost non-existent, it's birch, and the other one's mica. And there's somebody that built right in that road, and I don't know if it's under non-conforming use or what, but it is,
On carbonate,
it's on Micah. Up there on the northwest corner of town. So,
of the northwest,
northwest corner of,
right, and I believe Micah actually goes down to about 2 feet wide.
yeah, Micah does go down to nothing over there, so there's. Not much you can do over there except on them. Not Micah, Micah actually is wide over there, it's birch. If when birch comes from. Over there, it just gets narrower and narrower till it almost hits 2 feet. But then Micah narrows, but it doesn't get down, it may be 20
Yeah,
feet.
it should be like,
More like that, 20, you know, but there's somebody built in there, plus. We walked up the street on, which street was it,
is it new construction?
no, it's old, I mean, it's,
Maybe Bruce Sheldon's.
I think it is Bruce, but I mean, he's in the street.
Well, and
So-
he just got a. He was trying to get a building permit,
Right,
and I don't know if he got it or.
so she wrote an action plan for addressing property line encroachments and fire mitigation concerns in the town of Preston. Concern one, property owners encroachment, property owners have extended their property lines into town-owned land, including structures which impedes fire mitigation efforts. Solution would be surveying, conduct a thorough survey of town-owned land and adjacent properties to document encroachment accurately. Communication, notify property owners of encroachments and request immediate removal of structures or improvements. Legal action, consider legal proceedings if property owners refuse to comply. Inaccurate property lines, the town of Crestone lacks accurate property line mistakes, which complicates fire mitigation and legal enforcement. Again, surveying, cost of land surveying varies from 500 to 2,000 per acre, depending on the complexity and location. Legal aspects, incorrect property lines and encroachments create legal challenges for the town of Crestone. Financial implications, squatter laws and rights. So. When you get up there, there's this one spot where you wanna like look down the street, right, and you think it's perfect 60 foot. Then you find all these pins. And then you find these fences and you're just like, it is just like this mess of. You have no idea where you are. I mean, you could kind of say that like. This might be one of the pins, but then you go across and it's like, I think I measured 30 feet. And it's inside of town, so it's not even like on the outskirts of town. This is like. On a 60 foot street and we really don't know where those lines are now. If we were mitigating, we could work our way through that 30 foot section. assuming that we don't know which markers are the lines, but it's really kind of messed up. I mean, you get in there and you're just like, this is crazy. And I know that Bruce has really built, you know, vets up there, and he's just kind of like, since nobody ever questioned him, he just kind of took over some of the streets.
Are we gonna have a lunch break?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Anyway, we can get back to it. I'll come. 1:37, and we're back in session. I'm gonna just go back real quick and talk about this black mold thing that you were referring to. Just, we've kind of already talked about it, and we already made a decision that we're gonna write a letter. Okay. And basically just stating that, we have, our nuisance law provides us with, some teeth, but not enough. You know, we probably need more proof besides just what you brought in. But we're writing a letter just saying for them to be aware of it. We have a nuisance, against anything that has to do with health violations when it comes to, any citizens, even on private property. It's kind of like a, what is it, like a,
Oh, this is-
yeah, I mean, I can tell you the number and you can look it up yourself, it's online. It was 12150, abandoned, unfinished, deteriorated, unsafe buildings. That's about all we have in our code that can actually. Hey. Is that a good spot? All right. Go back, we're going to start, well, I'm gonna let our attorney, go through what he kind of wants to work on, as far as the order. But I assume we could start with the public. Open the floor,
Here and forward.
and what we want to do, regulations, yeah. That's what you guys are here for, right? Thanks for coming.
I have a question.
Yes,
Is water being exported with this water? And what's going on in the building?
yeah, I mean, we'll read the whole thing because we have to kind of do it as a public hearing, but it's really to protect, for protections. You know, all of that was trying to create layers of protection to keep people from exporting water. So it's,
Love it.
so it's like, a group effort, and every town is just implementing, every town and county is implementing layers of protection so that if somebody tries to come in here, we have something that,
Love it.
so. But, we have it here, and we're gonna probably end up having to read the whole thing, and it's pretty long, there's two parts to it.
All right.
There are the numbers corrected, on the top, 003, 2024, and
Those numbers are correct, yes.
those are correct.
Mayor, I was just briefly looking through our code. We have in draft public hearing.
hearing template.
Or, and not say that, hello. Would you like to run the public hearing or would you like?
I like when you do it, nine. I do that mine.
Here. With that. So, motion made to exit our regular meeting and enter into our public hearing.
No, that's good.
I think that would be the motion.
Okay, I can make that, right? I'll make a motion that we exit our regular meeting, enter a public hearing. Your second,
Second.
Dennis. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
And we'll start our public hearing.
We'll begin the public hearing, it's 1:43.
Okay, so thank you, Mayor. This is the public hearing to adopt the rules and regulations related to the 1041 powers. This is basically the last step in this process to declare, one, the equitable water from the San Luis Valley a matter of state interest. It is a group that has been really led by COG, the San Luis Valley Council of Governments, county, municipality, I guess municipality being town and city. Most municipalities in the San Luis Valley and counties have adopted these rules and regulations. What this does is provide a framework. If there ever is to be a major export of water out of the municipal, or out of the San Luis Valley, there are rules and regulations that will be implemented, basically run through the San Luis Valley Council of Governments. That was one of the largest sticking points. Was I really did not want the town of Crestone to have this burden fall on. If that was the case, I thought it would just be onerous for our staff, clerk, any of the board that would be involved, all of these specialists that would have to be hired. What this does is lay out a framework. So it's a process, basically an application that the applicant would have to go through. It would be overseen by the San Luis Valley Council of Governments. There would also be input by the town staff and also the board of trustees into the matter. And it's a process for that individual or that applicant to try to receive an application to have an export of water out of the San Luis Valley. There is quite a list of rules and regulations. They are attachment A. We have done a few things. One, we've designated the export of water a matter of statewide concern, which gives the town and municipality some say in that matter. One way to do that, or an example, would be a highway system and also airports. It's where 1041 powers are used to. Literally gives the local governments a say in a matter that is an issue of statewide concern. The applicant.
Excuse me, could you speak closer to the microphone a little bit? Thanks.
How's that, Trish? I'm not a musician, so. The applicant would bear the burden of having a completed application and also being able to show quite a few facts and also reports that are required for the application. And one of the town's last steps is to adopt the rules and regulations as proposed by the San Luis Valley COG. And part of that step also is to have a public hearing on those rules and regulations. So at this time, I'd like to announce what I consider the rules and regulations for this public hearing. And then we will just continue with the public hearing. The rules and regulations have been provided to the trustees. If they have any questions, I would like to ask them to go first to ask those questions. If there is any information that can be provided at that time, I will definitely try to do so. If the trustees have additional questions that I can't answer at that time, they can also postpone the actual vote on adopting these rules and regulations. I would also at that time then like to open up just for our citizens, any comments or questions. If those can be answered at that time, we'll do our best to do so. I would like to limit the opposition to 5 minutes and the pro to 5 minutes on this matter. If there are any additional questions, we can try to answer those if time allows. I'd then like the trustees to have approximately 5 minutes to ask any additional questions that may have came up at that time. And then we would have the matter put up for a vote, and that could also be continued if we would like. The San Luis Valley Council of Governments through Ms. Korber has asked for just an update on this policy for this procedure. There are a handful of municipalities in the San Luis Valley that have not taken the last few steps that are needed, so we're definitely good to come with that respect. But at this time, I guess I would ask the trustees if they have any questions about these rules and regulations that are presented. Trustee.
So if we're establishing areas and activities of state interest, but it sounds like we're granting decision-making authority to the SLD cog. How does that relate to state interest?
So state interest is statutory language. That is the language we have to use to have local control or local say of an area that may have statewide interest. San Luis Valley COG would be receiving the application, and then they would be processing the application according to the rules and regulations that are laid out in this packet.
Can you give me a non-water related example of local control over a state interest?
So I do not know the county name. But let's say the
We can
county
make it up.
that, okay, talking hypothetically, but I'm basically talking about Denver International Airport. Whatever county is located to the north, east, and south of DIA may have a concern over hundreds of airplanes that are possibly taking off and landing within their airspace on a daily schedule. So those counties have basically said that a large airport, any infrastructure development, expansion is a matter of statewide concern. And that gives those local counties and the surrounding areas the ability to voice their concerns, their opinions, their support, just their issues or concerns over airports, over airplanes that would be landing at that airport, which may not be in their county, but would be affecting their county. I'd be one way to say that.
So
Does that answer your question, Kristen? Sorry.
if there's an application received, are the municipalities in the valley notified, and how are they notified?
Yes, they are notified as part of the rules and regulations, and they are also part of the application review process.
We are.
Yes, the burden is not necessarily on them, but they do have a seat at the table. And that was kind of my hope, because I don't want the burden to be put on the town, but I still want the town to have a voice in there.
How,
Answer the question.
Yes.
how different is this from all the other towns and counties as far as the ordinance?
So the ordinance adopting the rules and regulations, the rules and regulations are the same for basically every county and town. The only change would be just a clarification that Mr. Farish and I did work on, which just in our opinion clarifies that San Luis Valley COG would be receiving the application and have the burden to process that application. I believe that is their intent, however, we just wanted that to be stated very clearly.
So the county has a very similar ordinance that they're putting in?
I have not seen the counties, but I would assume so. Part of the San Luis Valley Council of Governments project was they hired a firm to draft rules and regulations, to draft the adoption ordinances. So I actually have not had to do any of that work. It was a very onerous process, and it was their intent to have everything as close as possible so that it is that uniform valley-wide.
And so if somebody in Rio Grande County on private property wants to bottle water, sell it, does that have to go through COG?
It does depend on the scope and the size. And I guess it would depend greatly on the size of that. That was one of the questions I had too. Would a bottling plant be the same as a pipeline out of the San Luis Valley? And I do think that it would have to go through San Luis Valley COG. However, the smaller the scale, the probably the easier it is for the applicant to show that it does not have any adverse effects on the units.
Okay, but if they wanted to pipe it, they would definitely have to go through COG.
Yes, I believe that would be a major expansion of domestic water out of the San Luis Valley. That is the intent. And that would be to the north, south, east, or west.
And, okay,
So when an application is received, where would the hearing be from the, if it were coming from the front range, would it be in Denver metro area, or would it be somewhere within the belt?
It would be in the Alamos, it's in those, well, actually, I'm not sure where their office is at exactly, but it's my understanding it would be held locally here, because that's where the application is being received.
Is it a current export?
No, this is only for new exports out of the San Luis Valley.
What's being exported now?
Rio Grande Camp Compact, which is, right, is that,
Yeah.
well, that's how they, I mean, that,
Closed basin.
That would be, I mean, I guess the question there is, are you saying the river is an export of water? I mean, there are a few trans-basin diversions out of the Rio Grande currently.
But they're taking water from underground on the north side of the valley and pumping it into the Rio Grande, so that's a current export. In my opinion,
Would that be part of an adjudication plan?
it's the closed basin project, right?
Yeah, the closed basin project.
So they have wells that pump water into the ditch.
Mhm.
That goes down to the Rio Grande to, it's an adjudication in that they owe water down the river.
Texas and.
Yeah, so this was the federal government and, when they worked with the Rio Grande Compact between New Mexico, Texas and Mexico, had said that Colorado had a deficit, so they put in the closed basin project, which is pretty much the area on the south of what's now the Vaca Wildlife Refuge area. Have wells that they drilled, they've been pumping into a canal that goes into the Rio Grande. A lot of people are still upset because it was something that was supposed to have a short-term life. And,
Excess water.
right, it's like once Elephant Butte Reservoir was filled, it was supposed to stop, but it's continued the last 20 years. So it's basically water exporting the valley, except it's being done by the federal government, it's Colorado, actually the Colorado government to,
And it's,
So there are multiple compacts, this would not affect those compacts, and this really is aimed at more of an interbasin transfer, so something out of the Rio Grande Basin. And it sounds
so
like
if somebody wanted
they'd
to,
be staying within. the
what
Rio Grande
what
Basin.
we were looking at before, if you have a water development who wants to put it in a canal, put it in the Rio Grande and send it to Albuquerque as a water sale.
That may be slightly different because that would probably entail a change of water use rights in San Luis Valley, and I believe that would trigger this application process.
So with the joint planning area, if someone comes into Castilla County and they want to have some sort of water export. And it triggers this application process, all of the folks in these counties would have a say on what Castilla County is able to do?
I think that they would have some input, and that is the goal, is to have a valley-wide driving force, have to have a combined voice. Would a single voice of a municipality, say on the northern end of the valley, sway something that's going on the southern end of the valley? Probably not, but it would be heard and at the table. And that is also the point, is to have all municipalities and counties just to be involved in this overall permit process and approval process.
And from my understanding and what I've heard, and I'd like your opinion on this, that the folks who have been signing into this are trying to protect the water in the San Luis Valley from being exported. I mean, I feel like that has been the driving force with this joint planning area.
So I don't want to say that this group is swayed one side or the other, but I would say that they definitely lean toward conservation. And preventing that. I mean, it's a permit process. It's not like they're just going to sign it over. That's why these rules and regulations are in place. So I would say yes, if there is one leaning, one or the other, it is toward conservation.
So how would this affect, the seemingly ongoing plans for RWR to want to export water to the Front Range?
That is basically what has triggered this action. and this review, this process. And now if someone, RWR was to come back in with a new application or a new plan, they would fall into this and have to complete this process, this application process.
They also have, you know, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of people that they're trying to, you know, provide water for out of pocket. So adding applications makes it, you know, a little more burdensome for them. But the general conversations I had out in the valley was that they're not gonna stop and they can fill out applications and they can afford it, so.
I believe that is
Oh,
part of
does
the
this
question too, is the permit process, it is designed to be put into the mix of when someone is trying to do that application. Is it easier to go after a drainage that may be physically closer? There has been some work on Arkansas drainage by RWR, Douglas County, El Paso County, and that's something they would have to weigh into.
So what sort of teeth does this have?
Really, in my opinion, it is gonna require the applicant to do a lot of research, a lot of studies. It's gonna tie up a lot of time, resources, and funding to show that they are not hurting the San Luis Valley, or if they are hurting the San Luis Valley in some way, there is an offset to do that, be that financial, be that actual water replacement, which has been multitude of reasons. The studies are gonna be very wide ranging from financial studies. It's gonna take into account a multitude of species of vertebrates, amphibians, and then also just people. It's gonna have to take into account the lack of harm for everyone else in the San Luis Valley, or if there is that harm, a plan to try to offset that.
And if the application goes through COG, can COG deny the application based on a perceived harm to the valley? Or do they have teeth to deny applications?
That is their job, is to approve or deny applications, yes.
So if somebody goes. Excuse me, somebody goes through the application process, when we had to deal with AWDI, it ended up basically in a big lawsuit. That was won basically by the people to stop that Trans Mountain version. Does this preclude anybody or any town or group from suing? I mean, are we agreeing to the terms of COG, which means that we then have to abide by whatever their decisions are?
Well, I would say the short answer is yes, we are allowing COG to be the governing body that would approve or deny this permit that would be, that's not received yet, but a potential permit and an application, and they would be taking action on that. And that would be though with the rules and regulations, it's not an arbitrary decision. They're requiring documentation, they're requiring finding of facts from the applicant, and multiple hearings would be involved also.
So if a municipality disagreed with COG's decision and felt like they really were going to be impacted, can they act independently or do they
You
have?
can remove yourself from this agreement. There is a 2-year period where you're gonna abide by those rules and regulations after that, but you can remove yourself from this agreement.
So yeah, they could put in, whoever gets on COG, we're at their mercy.
For 2 years, that's what he just said,
Yeah, but you can do a lot in 2 years.
they can hurt us in 2 years.
Well, the board, the application would also be heard. They would have community support and involvement, and they would be reaching out to the localities and locations that are involved in this.
There's a lot more
than the others.
So are we looking at? Does this? Signing on to this actually work to help protect San Luis Valley water? Is it set up to be an obstacle towards just an easy access to exporting water? And does it add a layer of water protection?
Well, I want to try to answer that correctly. I believe that, and I don't want to use the terms obstacle or protection, but an applicant is required to do quite a few things to show quite a few facts to show that they are alleviating these burdens. And then also to comply with the rules and regulations of this permit before one would be granted.
So as it stands right now, a water exporter doesn't have to jump through those hoops and show these sorts of requirements or conditions or,
Correct.
so right now.
Not to this level. I mean, there are some things in place just on a state level and in the San Luis Valley that they would have to do, but not nearly to the level of joining into this.
So this adds another layer of burden of proof and looking at accountability and the environment and.
And I would really say that's quite a few layers. Yes.
Seth, do you know if this is divided up, by where the location of the counties are? Or is it divided up by, let's say, public health and environment, in their specific regions that go through the valley?
So I think the goal is not to be divided up, actually. It's the group. It's Rio Grande County, Alamosa County, Costilla County, Mineral County, then have Pinellas County, and Swatch County.
This actually says Crestone.
Do I leave one out?
Huh?
So
Maybe a typo in there.
Yeah.
Okay. And the city, obviously, it's the city, town, Crestone.
Fine.
Could you point that out? There's a page 3.
So you made reference to the north end of the valley, all the water leaving there now. What I'm getting from what I'm hearing you say is because we would be united, then, because what's one county might be experiencing would also, even though it's drawing out of that county or that region, it still would be tapping into the entire aquifer throughout the whole valley.
Yes, and that is the intent and the point, to have all the counties and as many municipalities to be these rules and regulations. So to try to show a little more.
In my mind, there would always be an effect regardless of where they're drawing from on some county that might not even be next door. Because the water doesn't know any boundaries.
And there is a delineation of the closed basin and the open basin aquifer, and that does get into some various Department of Water and Natural Resource issues. But it is, I'm sorry, once again, trying to have all of the counties, all of the municipalities involved in this.
Okay.
The overall tone is more of an extra layer and extra protection for any potential water export applications.
Are there any municipalities in those 6 counties that aren't doing this? Or denied this?
I am not aware of anyone that has denied it. I do believe that Alamosa City and County have adopted the rules and regulations and the declarations of statewide matter of concern. I know that Monte Vista, South Fork, Del Norte, Blanca, and the town of Saguache are in the process of adopting them also. I do not know the status of Creed.
What about San Luis?
I am not sure what San Luis does in regard to this. I do know that their attorney, Barb Zollers, is aware of this and is also working on it. I've seen her comments on these emails. I have not heard any denials or any towns, counties, cities that I believe are going to not opt into these rules and regulations.
So I know that back when we had AWDI with their export plan, that was, most of the wells were going to be on the Baca Ranch, some out by Yellow Grove. And it was initially thought that basically it was going to impact Crestone and Moffett, and there wasn't much political might there at all. And it was when the whole San Luis Valley realized that this water export could affect wells in Center and the whole closed basin project, and set precedents that the entire San Luis Valley, all the way to San Luis and Toledo, everywhere within the valley got on board to fight against the water project, and they ended up being a really strong voice, and even passed by like 98% of the vote, a bond issue in order to fight for water development. So if it had been left just to Moffett and Crestone, maybe Center to fight the water development, would have been swallowed up. But because it was a valley-wide effort against the export, it brought a lot of money and a lot of expertise to the battle. So,
I do believe that that's exactly what the rules and regulations are gonna allow, is that expertise and then to San Luis Valley COG, if they receive an application, they're going to be hiring quite a few experts. The other side, the applicant will be hiring quite a few experts too. There would be. It's gonna take a while for an application to be processed. You know, I can't say that I've seen an application. I honestly hope that I don't in my career. But I think that an application, if it is applied for, it is going to be a few years before it needs to be on it.
So lots of public hearings
The,
too.
like you said, AWBI, Stockman's, RWR, this has been going on for quite a while. And it's probably not ever gonna stop, so.
well, I would think that it makes a lot of sense for the town to join in if it's part of a valley-wide region to help keep water from being exported out of San Luis Valley. If that's its intent and that's its purpose. I think it's one of those united we stand sort of things. If it does not, impact our own ability to use our own water as we see fit.
That's a lot to read right there. Did we get that?
That has been, should have been supplied, I wanna say,
Was it?
It's in your binder.
8 months ago. First time.
I think maybe one last thing I would say, and it's kind of obviously a really sensitive subject. But I do think the conversations we have around water are oversimplified. And that we say export is bad. And I probably would get some of the numbers wrong, but in some of my research, we're also talking about people purchasing water rights and being able to pipe it out. So that's technically their water, if they have rights to it. But if you look at like potato farming in Center, I think it takes 30 gallons of water to grow a pound of potatoes. And they can sell that pound of potatoes for 7 cents or something like that. So if I was a farmer, I would rather bottle and sell my water than lose money growing potatoes. And I've heard some people say that growing potatoes is exporting water.
One potato at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically taking, an excess of water from the aquifer, putting it into a potato and selling it instead of just piping it out. So, because it's not being sold here, it's being sold in a different state. So, I think the conversation is oversimplified, but I do believe that the intention of this is to make it more difficult to export water.
And they do define this project as a major domestic water treatment center, shall include any collection, treatment, storage, or distribution center. And any of its components for the export of water outside the general planning area, which is the 6 counties. Directly or by exchange with the eventual capacity to serve 15 or more service connections. It's basically anything 15 homes or larger.
So
Would
this,
be included to trigger that.
I mean, I know that is, without, what you just read was, that question, this is not the export of water for agricultural use, it's the export of oil to water somebody's golf course.
I believe it could be for agriculture. use.
Oh, it could.
Well, and it's probably also for people's homes. But I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry.
It's speculation, it's just basically any use of water outside of this valley.
So how does this affect then, use within the San Luis Valley, as an example, maybe taking water that's currently used as agricultural and having it become water concerns to say allow housing development. This isn't internal usage of our water, somebody has
It's the
a
housing
nice
development.
ranch and they wanna put 1,000 houses on it.
So the housing development's in the San Luis Valley. So in that hypothetical, that would not trigger this permit application, because it's not an export of water outside of the San Luis Valley. So if trustees don't mind, I may just ask if there's any public comment, pro or con, then we'll come back to the trustees for additional comments, questions, pro or con, and then we'll continue on the public hearing. But those will be the next few steps. So this time, any other questions from the trustees? Seeing none, we'll move to the public question, public comments. We'll answer what we can. I definitely don't want to say that I know anything or everything, but I will try my best. So, public comments, we can limit it to 5 or 10 minutes just to keep the ball rolling, and then we'll come back to the trustees.
You wanna go first? Yeah, brother, come on in.
First of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Marcus Weir, I'm running for county commissioner. This is kind of concerning because we are creating a path to allow for, the process to happen, whether it gets approved or not. And the connection with the COG, we can feel confident with what leaders we may have there at the moment, but, into the future, things can change. And I think that there's concerns that we should think about. I don't think I'm pro or con on this yet. I don't have enough information. But I'm just thinking about how creating this process, maybe into the future, ends up being very bad news. Also wondering, if it's the pipeline coming through our town. And we're allowing the COG to make the ultimate decision. We don't have the ultimate teeth in it. From what I hear, some of the arguments, I understand the environmental ones and that can be hard to jump through, but as a developer and a general contractor, I know that that's also part of what you do when you're developing. You learn how to go through these application processes. And so my ears go up when I hear things like, well, we talk about the ability for this to be sold to the public as they're gonna get something out of it. And so maybe some parts of the county, some parts of the valley, that won't see the pipeline. Maybe they think that where they're getting their water from won't directly see their water table drop in their wells. But they see the benefit of the financials coming in for that trade and they get lured in. And eventually, what does that decision at the COG do? And how permanent is it? The other thing I wanna know is if we're going through and making all these regulations, do we have something in there that says, look, if we're gonna see negative impact, even after we go through all this process of saying that, applying for this, do we also have teeth to say, well, we watched our water wells drop? We watched the negative impact. We saw animals leave. Maybe we thought, maybe you did your process the right way to show what testing to get you through this, but what do we have as the public to say, okay, we want this to stop, because like the basin is being pumped and the way the federal federal government is continuing to punish the whole valley for what should have been expired at this point. Once these things are put in once they happen, they are very hard to get rid of. So yeah, I would want to know, like, is there any language in there that says, okay, well, even after this gets approved, there's some way for us to monitor how this is actually affecting our valley and citizens and the farms and the animals and all the lights that live here. And if there are negative impacts that we can prove, then we can remove this process and say, okay, this was a bad choice, because you really don't know until it actually goes into effect what truly will be the result of it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it. I think you guys are all doing a great job and I appreciate y'all.
If I might address that here, as I read these rules and regulations, this is more aimed at the front end. This is an application, a denial, and an approval. You know, 20, let's say 5 years, let's say 20 years, let's say 25 years after the fact. That is not directly addressed in these rules and regulations. I do believe that there would be some sort of administrative appeal to that, finding the fact and what actually occurred during your hearings. But the current rules and regulations, to my reading, don't deal with something that's may happen 5, 10, 15, 25 years down the line.
Would you say that this particular 1041 is better to have than not have as far as the concerns? I mean, it seems like if we didn't have this and then somebody applied, say, across the valley for water export, we had no say, you know, and they're just like, yeah, go ahead, do it, because you know.
Well, that's the other part of it is that do we have to be, if we're adopting these regulations and this permitting process, does it have to be that the ultimate decision for our particular area goes to the COG? Or can the municipality have these regulations on its own? I mean, I understand what you were saying earlier, where you said it could be a little too much for our little town to fight on its own, and that's why we're gonna come together. But the one part about that becomes dangerous about coming together with a very large group is that then you become minimized because your population base is smaller. And then, yeah, maybe you don't get hurt, and that's the risk.
Well, I guess I'm saying that we wouldn't get hurt even more if we don't do this. In other words, if we don't have something that unites us, then there's a possibility that they can, who do they apply to, just like the county, and then the county has control, whatever county it might be. At least this way, all the counties have a say. And we can go, there's a ton of stuff in there about public hearings, so we could go and, argue that it's gonna affect us, even if it's all the way over there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to argue it. It wouldn't be a means to it. So it's, in my opinion, this is creating more of a means to be able to argue anything that comes up.
And I would hope that would be the case too.
That's what it seems like, but, of course, it's a pretty hefty document and, it seems like the 1041 have always been more of a protective stance than a, open business type stance.
I would generally say they are trying to be a little more inclusive. Another example, trustee, would be, I believe it's Caneos and Castilla are declaring the possible expansion of power distribution lines through their counties as a 1041 matter of concern. And it's if I was to try to describe what I think they are trying to do is to gain a little more control or say in where this actual transmission line is going to be placed.
But it's gonna be placed.
It's probably going to be placed, but trying to say this back, and have some feedback on those decisions being made.
Jeff Winstead, state my name for the record. I have a few questions for the town attorney, Seth Walker. Seth, you had mentioned there that we're gonna need, that these people that would file through the paperwork, they're gonna need to do scientific studies and stuff like that. But as Benji was, not Benji, sorry, Adam was talking about, they're rich, they're overloaded with money, they can do what they want, they can buy out a scientific research study and say it's not gonna harm us. But does the COG people that you're talking about they run their own scientific eco study on how it could ruin our wildlife or water tables? Do they run that, or do the COGS people suggest the people that they have to use, or is that company also bought out because you have to watch the money?
The COG would be hiring their own experts and on quite a few subjects, like you said. There's also, I think we said, wildlife, economics, it does get into hydrology. I think the economics was a very interesting one, as I was going through these rural regulations. Have an economist actually define the economy of the San Luis Valley, what we are pursuing now, and how that would be affected if this section of farmland is not used to generate agriculture. How would that affect that farmer specifically? How that might affect his employees, how that might affect the town, how that might affect the county, how that might affect housing in that county also. There are just a lot of studies and findings that need to be made as part of this permit application, and I think they're very widespread.
With past research, from back research, brought into new research with multiple scientific people looking at each one, not just one organization, but multiple organizations looking at it is the best bet.
Well, I
Getting different studies from different people.
So the applicant would definitely have experts, their own experts. San Luis Valley COG would also have their experts. There could be third parties that would bring in their findings of fact also. And if they're supported, we're found to be just and valid, that is something that San Luis Valley COG can say.
The county already is under contract with, some sort of scientific professionals doing studies of the water tables. And they're starting to provide like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say infrared, but they're like providing images and really spending some money on learning more about it. So I would assume if somebody in Conejos County wanted to export water, that even Swatch County would bring that information, probably other counties, probably COG. Does that sound?
Yes, that's exactly what the permit process is for. Bring that information, combining that.
Right. Thank you. So my next question to you, is this application available just to any Joe Schmo, or you gotta be a rich person that wants to export our water? So we can look at it and, you know, see what the questions are.
Well, that's a very good question. I don't know where it's published, but to my knowledge, it's available to anyone that wants to receive a copy through, that's gonna be COG at this time. They've already had
So we COG.
They've already had individuals, municipalities, counties sign up for it, so the application should be available. If there's not a cost to receive the application, there is a cost to process the application.
Okay, all right. Well, I really appreciate everybody's questions and the response. And we all know with my research and my history that famine, if you can look this up on any channel, any website, I mean, anything, that famine is 98% caused by humans. And we have the right to stand up to solve this and do it right, because we only get one chance to do this right, to save our water for our grandkids and our grandkids' kids in the future. I've done a lot of research and I've done a lot of podcasts in the next 2 weeks about this topic and everything that's coming on. And if they want water, I think they should do some geoengineering in the skies and make it rain. Thank you, I'm Jeff Winstead.
Thank you, Ms. Brinstead. Any additional public comment?
Did you have one?
Want to say, there's no more discussion about the,
No.
okay. So. Be caring enough to stay for the water though. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, Mayor, seeing no more public comment, close the public comment session of the hearing and open it back up to the Board of Trustees for any additional questions or comments.
I'll make a vote. I'll make a motion.
No motion.
All right.
Just continuing on through the public hearing.
Okay. We will end the public hearing and
Continuing on with the public hearing,
continuing on with the public hearing.
just back to our trustees for additional comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay.
And I just want to reiterate that I think that's an oversimplification. And that you vote an oversimplification of the conversation about conserving, conserving and preserving water for our grandchildren. Hold on. And that, I'll just look over here. And you both were referencing animals and water tables being damaged. And our water table is damaged now. And it's not damaged from us piping water out of the valley. And I'm not advocating that we pipe water out of the valley. I'm just saying our water table is damaged by humans that live here. And you can go talk to 200 or 500 farmers and ranchers in the valley, and they will tell you the same thing. And the way that we currently allow and perpetuate water usage through the type of agriculture that we do in the valley, our water table and our wildlife is damaged. And it will not last for our grandchildren if we don't do something different.
A potato and water are two different things. You can use water to grow a potato, but you're still feeding someone outside this valley. That's two different peas in a pot of money. That's good. Cool. So,
Yep.
exporting a potato is not water, as you're feeding somebody out here that needs more food. And I support all gardeners, give them the water.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't say damaged. It says the water tables were start drop dramatically. We're talking about seeing a result that was adverse, and obviously the water table was damaged, and we've been dealing with that for a long period of time. Yeah, it didn't say damaged.
Right. The county commissioners just got off a meeting not too long ago. They were talking about how the water tables are dropping and how they're having to shut off wells. So now we're gonna escort it too. I mean, come on, relatives. Let's look at the bigger picture, look at all of it.
Thanks, Marcus. That's been the any additional comments? Which one? Do you have any additional comments?
No.
So, oh, we got two of them.
The concern that I resonate with the most is, does sharing our decision-making power reduce our decision-making power, or does it improve it? And I'm not saying, I'm just on the fence about whether or not it does or does not. And I'm wondering what other people are thinking about that, because it is true that by sharing this decision-making power does in some ways give us strength, and in other ways, it, you know, it opens us up to the decision-making of other people.
I think it depends on the location, to tell you the truth, of where the application takes place. So if it happens across the valley, we're gonna have a say, but it probably won't be the same power or as somebody, you know, people that live over there are most affected by it, even though it does affect us.
I mean, is that in the rules and regulations? I guess it's really just a procedural question where, you know, I kind of asked at first, like, if Costilla County, if the application is originated in that location and SLV cog comes together and everyone there says yay or nay, does it still revert back to Costilla County in some way where they get to make the final decision for themselves? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
The actual application is going to be received by COG, and the decision would come from COG for a permit denial or approval. I'm trying to find the section that talks about the makeup of the San Luis Valley COG and how if a project is not on our side of the San Luis Valley, how that individual, for lack of better words, would be represented, and then how also the town of Crestone may be represented. So
Right, is there like a-
for that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there like does the percentage of your voice change with location, or is what that procedurally looks like?
I will have to get back to you. There is not a percentage though. It's more of just a weight that the board, the San Luis Valley COG is going to take into account.
Right.
Along with the black and white of the permit application.
Okay.
So at this point, is the federal government involved now?
No, this is well. I mean, yes, with the Rio Grande Compact and in a lot of ways. But with the 141 powers, no, that is a issue.
So they wouldn't have any say in both causes. They would not be part of the review process of the application.
I honestly think that they would, due to the fact that we have, the sand dunes designated as a national monument. Due to the fact that we have national wetlands and wildlands within the state of Louis Valley. So I do think that those bodies would have representatives that do want to have their voice known. Also. So. Does this permit process create a seat for the federal government? No, but I do think that they would have some comments and some questions if an application or permit is received.
I'm just, on this one, I'm just gonna ask your opinion. If we had water rights that we were not using right now, would you think it would be in our best interest to use those? We have wells that are available to us that we're not using.
So. There's a lot of questions there. Municipalities, you cannot own speculative water rights in the state of Colorado. Municipalities are able to hold on to water rights for growth. They do have to show some use or some intent to use those water rights though in the future. I believe that was an issue where Megan was involved a month or two ago with the water right that was not being currently used. I mean, she did have a filing to fill out, which just shows that the town does anticipate to use that water right. And that process, I forget the timeline on that, but I believe it's reviewed approximately every 5 years, and that's the filing Megan had to do this summer. And Megan is with our Bird Hill, our water right attorney firm.
So the fact that we've got a bird sanctuary in our valley might help us in some respect.
There's a lot of federal property, and I do think that the feds would want to have a showing that that's not going to negatively affect them. And bird sanctuary, the national park or monuments are going around, yes, quite a few. And that doesn't seem, I think, the Forest Service needs to be involved in that. So.
Dennis, for the record, I think the feds are the most likely entity that will take the water someday. But that's a separate conversation. Another question about this 1041. Currently, the conservation district for Rio Grande is pretty much governing the sub-districts. So I think they're governing water usage. So if somebody in sub-district 4 or 5 right now wanted to pipe water out, what would their process be?
They would also, well, what do you mean by they?
The private person, private property in sub-district 4 wants to pipe water out.
Well, they would
Free 1041.
some work to do with their actual sub-district, to show.
They would go to their
I'm
sub-district.
sure that there would be some limitation put on that due to consumptive use versus, if I'm gonna use an example, say a farmer is actually pumping 80 gallons out of 100. And they may have 20 of those gallons that are going back into the aquifer. There's probably gonna be some determination, and I'm really going out on a limb here, these are just speculations. That if they were to be given a permit, they could export, but they may limit that export of water, actually their consumptive use.
Well, I guess my point is the current authority, the sub-district, then Rio Grande Conservation District, and then the state? Or is the state the current determining factor as to how they can use their water? Before this agreement,
So they can use their water for whatever is decreed on their water, right?
determined by the state?
That would be the state and the sub-districts also. Yes.
So is the COG going to become a ruling authority of the Rio Grande Water Conservation District?
No, this is simply related to the export of water outside the San Luis Valley.
But they'll have more authority to determine that than the current authority.
The current authority being a sub-district,
Which is then the Rio Grande Conservation District.
I do not believe will be involved in any of the further actions of the individual. once they have a water right necessarily. I don't think that they would be the ones saying yes or no to an export application, because there's not an export application required.
Who denied the AWDI?
It's what,
Who denied the AWDI?
it went through Colorado Water Court,
So state,
it was the state who
The
determined.
state was in AWDI, yes, that was in the eighties, so that was before my time, but that's my understanding.
and now could the state come into COG and say, oh, we've decided to approve it regardless of this local control?
Approve.
On export.
So, I mean, it first was done in the Division of Water Resources in our own division at Alamosa. So that's where the first decision, I mean, it's a state agency, but it was a regional. If I remember correctly, it was like Division 3, whatever, it was the Alamosa. State operated, but our local Division of Water Resources to where, because at the trial on it was held in Alamosa. And so it was a local trial within our local Colorado sub-district that is the ones who made the decision. So the decision wasn't made in Denver, it was made in the local courts here by our by the Division of Water Resources. Just like as if you were to apply for a well permit, you go to the Division of Water Resources here in Alamosa. And so my understanding with this is that it was going through its regional Division of Water Resources. And the state engineer was involved, of course, state agencies were involved, but the lawsuit happened here, took place in Alamosa. When basically people sued and numerous agencies sued against the state issuing AWDI, the water permit.
And did that answer your question? I guess I was trying to figure out, when you say the state of Colorado. The state owns the water. Individuals can have water rights to use the water, but the state owns the water for the progression of the people of the state of Colorado.
Except for the Rio Grande Conservation District, which is basically federal.
Well, I would say the water is still owned by the state of Colorado. The use of the water is governed by the rules and regulations, but the water is actually still owned by the state. The state is giving individuals, farmers, towns.
Regulated.
The ability to use that.
Just regulated. So one of the things that made me in favor of doing this is because it recognizes a bioregion. And as you said, water is all interrelated and you know, if you have a big water drought over here, it's going to be over the year. And I think it offers a little more checks and balances. Let's say Rio Grande County or Saguache County or any county decides maybe they're gonna be in support of an export project. This brings in the whole region to be able to weigh into it and say, okay, it might really benefit your particular town to export water. You're gonna have all this money and it's going to, you know, export it. The rest of the county said, okay, you're gonna make a bit of money off of this, but this is how it's going to affect the birds or bird migrations or tourism or any number of things. You can have a broader perspective that says your financial gain could be a regional route. If it's functioning as it should, and it's not, the COG is not staffed by people who are all, like, yeah, let's export all the water, make a bunch of money and turn it into a desert. And, so it comes back to my question is who's COG? And if it's towns sending their own individual representatives to be an agency that's really looking out for the welfare of the San Luis Valley. You know, you don't want to see COG staffed by developers, basically. I do like the idea of there being broader studies it's like when we were dealing with AWDI, a real surprising turning point in the trial was when it was determined that the drawdown of the aquifer would affect the Great Sand Dunes. The stability of the Great Sand Dunes was determined by having enough groundwater to be able to keep moisture into the sand dunes to where they maintain their structure and didn't turn it out of the awful way. And that brought in the national parks and the national monument at that time. And the water interest is when we really discovered just what kind of an impact that a drawdown of 60 feet over here would have on a location 100 miles over there. And so this is where we're not isolated, we really are a region. And if this council of governments goal is to mandate just these sort of studies. The study of the sand dunes was not mandated, it was brought in by people who were fighting. It wasn't the Division of Water Resources didn't say, hey, how's it gonna affect the sand dunes? It was other agencies who said, is this gonna affect the sand dunes? So this is where I'm wondering if by having this, it brings a broader viewpoint towards the impact of water exploitation. And truthfully, I would hope, I mean, this is you saying it's about water export. Adam makes a really big point about the drawdown of our aquifer by people who live right here. But that is another subject matter. But I would lean towards joining this just to be part of a broader voice to protect the water in the valley.
I have a question about as far as like the relief of the burden. That, you know, Crestone might face if we just like went at it alone. Does in this agreement to work together, does that somehow reflect how the funding happens if like if somebody comes in and COG says, well, we need to have our own independent studies of what's happening, does that burden of the finances somehow get shared? Or is that still solely on the municipality that is, you know, in a conversation with the person applying?
This application through the COG, part of the application fee is that the applicant is going to have to refund any experts that the COG brings in.
Nice,
For conference.
that's pretty sick.
So that was
I'll pull that out also, because I thought that was what you were. But there's quite a bit, so.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if you said it or not, but, how are the representatives for COG chosen through an election?
I was looking that up now,
Well, that's what Armando just dropped out of, and I was the alternate for, I believe, right? So I guess now I'm gonna say fine, do it.
I do not know if how they're appointed or elected. I would assume it is an elected position. Their current executive board, the chairman is Tom Kraken, vice chairman Vern Pearson out of Alamosa, Kraken out of Swatch. Secretary treasurer is Carlos Garcia of the Nejos. And their members include Carson out of Alamosa County, PG Dennis of Rio Grande County, Romero Weber, Mineral County, Robert Espinoza out of Costilla, Gene Glover out of Rio Grande, Jeffrey Larson out of Mineral, Renata Sanchez out of Costilla, Iris Garcia out of Swatch, and Aaron Gale of Conejos. And they do have their minutes posted here. Their meetings are all online. You can attend in person.
Is a representative the same as a member?
Representative.
Would Dana be a member or a representative?
I'm not sure what Armando stepped down for.
This just says he was serving on the San Luis Valley Council of Governments, and then he was, you know, they invited us, didn't they?
They did, I would say you're the representative, because you were invited to represent the town of Crestone on the. Or we weren't, but our.
Represent or be a member?
I'm not.
I don't think we're all counted tonight.
I'm not sure, this list is counties at this time.
I am on,
Although,
I have an email communication with SLB cog. I could ask them.
Irina was our representative
Mm-hmm.
and participated in conversations, but I don't know that she had a vote.
I do know that Iris is the clerk and administrator for the town of Swaraj. I believe that Rayana is involved possibly in St. Louis, I'm not sure. Gene Glover's a commissioner. Gigi Dennis represents the municipalities, if I'm reading this correctly, she would be the town administrator for Monteston.
That, 1041s in general are designed for protection. I mean, it's just kind of like, that's what the state, maybe even the whole,
It's
Cost.
it's a tool that local agencies, be that counties, cities or towns, can use to try to protect themselves in a lot of ways. Yes, I would say that is in a nutshell.
yeah, because it just seems like that when they were forming this thing, they kept saying, well, we're gonna implement these 1041 because they just they add that extra layer of protection that we wouldn't have independently.
That would be one way to say that.
Yes.
I think the 1041s were already in place and now we're,
There's 1041s, I mean, different types of 1041s in different places, right?
Yes, there's quite a few 1041. 1041 is just the statute regulation to declare something a matter of statewide concern and increase the local's rights.
So what do you need from us now?
Well, if we would, on no other comments from the trustees or the public, we would close the public hearing. And then what we would be asking for is simply a motion to adopt the rules and regulations of the San Luis Valley 1041 powers for the projects for water export outside of San Luis Valley. We've already designated them a matter of statewide concern. So this is really just one of the last steps to adopt these rules and regulations. And before we do that, if you do not mind, there is a 2-year period that the town would like to opt out of this recognition in this group, where they're going to follow these rules and regulations. And that is something that's just in here. I just bring that up before we do vote. So I guess, yes, with no further comment, we would close this public hearing and then turn this back over to the board for the continuation of their board meeting. I believe the vote on the rules and regulations is actually a few agenda items down.
The ordinance is 003/2024. Number 7.
Sorry, let me just pull up in the agenda.
Are we closing the public hearing?
Oh.
So we can do it out of order, it's absolutely fine. That would just be.
It's here now. Yeah.
So yes, we've closed the public hearing. We have given this back over to our mayor, who has resumed the board of trustees meeting on September 9th. Continuing down through our agenda item, I'm being told the next item is. Consideration of ordinance number 003/2024, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Crestone, Colorado, adopting rules and regulations as guidelines for designating site selection and construction of major new domestic water systems and major extensions of existing domestic water systems and municipal and industrial water projects as activities of state interest. So would there be a motion to
I'll make the motion.
pass this ordinance, consider this ordinance, or continue this ordinance? I'm sorry,
Make a motion
to pass or accept ordinance 003/2024.
to accept the ordinance.
Second.
I'd like to wait for Dana to come back, if she wishes. We have a motion to approve this ordinance. Pass this ordinance 003/2024.
And a second.
And a second.
Okay,
Do you have any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I would say, just so you guys know, part of the reason I would vote yes is. Through my relationship building in the last 6 months, I think that Crestone Baca acts as. Unaware of the rest of the county, and the rest of the valley a lot and their actions, so I feel like out of solidarity, just agreeing to it is a gesture of kind of more togetherness.
So I do have a physical copy and you have an electronic copy. Would you like to have our mayor sign that after our meeting tonight?
Yeah, I have this property.
We need to just change one little thing on there that says to watch instead of question.
And there's a minor,
This is second one.
right? And that edit is in section 2. The last word was presto, and that should be changed to slash.
I did just email SLB cog about getting another member on there and specifically about the 1041. Our ability to vote on it.
Now you don't want to do it?
Well, now it seems really important, doesn't it?
Mayor, just
So
let
let me
me
go back to the top.
get my.
We already accepted trustee resignation. That was something we did on our own.
It's a resolution 006/2024.
And that email you,
Yeah, that
it
was-
should be 007.
07. Well, mine's that we make, remind me of stuff there. And just so I'm also brought up to speed, the board of trustees desires to fill the vacant position by appointment.
Yeah, we haven't picked one yet to fulfill it, but we accepted the resignation.
Okay, so that does start our timeline.
Right now,
As this resolution, we have 60 days to either make that appointment or declare the position open and call for an election matter. So the clock does start ticking today, for that matter. The only possible, well, quite a few possible downfalls in any delay, but one big one would be as we're moving into our budget season, some of our votes do require a supermajority. Things with financial matters, so just having that individual,
Like what?
the budget, accept
the budget,
What about the supplemental budget?
supplemental budget also.
And what's a super majority?
So we need a majority for most ordinances to pass. We need, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I believe it is our 5/7 for financial matters to pass. So having one person vacant does affect that voting. Okay. So that's just what we consider.
Today, we approved a draft for release to the public of a supplemental budget.
So a draft, I believe, is not actually encumbering or spending any funds, so I believe that that's okay as long as we have a majority.
So we can't approve our supplemental budget at the end of October until we appoint someone.
We could if we had, he's just saying that. If it was unanimous vote, we have 6.
5 of 6 or 5 of 7,
I believe it is our 5/7.
so we need 7.
Or you get a 6 of 6, right?
We need 5 of the 7 to vote yes to adopt some financial.
But not 5 of 6.
Well, let me look at those numbers. That's what I'm saying.
How about 6 to 6?
Sure.
6 of 6 is great. That was 100%. I'm just saying, we need a higher percentage for some financial matters. So that's just a caution there. Okay.
Uh,
we need to advertise the vacancy?
I believe that is best practice, required though, no.
I think we should.
Yeah, let's direct our Kurt to do a, at
Request
least a
letters,
post on it, huh?
request letters of intent.
Okay, so once again, moving forward, acting slightly out of order here, I'm sorry. The next proposed ordinance would be,
I'm sorry, on letters of intent, you might state the qualifications.
No, like living in town for over a year.
Yeah, maybe certain age.
Registered voter.
It's only 90 days. I should look into it. 6 months, I can't remember, I don't think it's a year.
It's a year.
It's a year?
You have to be a resident of the town for a year.
12 months, the preceding 12 months.
I don't know, the registered voter would have a different time period.
Yeah, I think you just have to be registered to vote,
You don't have to.
but not for, you have to be registered to vote, but I don't think that there's like a time period on the voter registration. Because there wasn't, when I ran.
Moving forward, some background on the proposed ordinance. I have it listed as ordinance number 005/2024. This would be an ordinance amending the Crestone Model Traffic Code relating to the operation of golf cars in the town of Crestone, Colorado. Clerk, I was able to find a recorded ordinance, 2008 008. That was signed by Ralph Abrams, mayor at the time, and witnessed by IKEA. That was done on November 1st, 2008, and it was recorded. Now that is recorded in -16 of 2008 at 149. I can give you a copy of that.
I think we should.
So, yeah.
So right now, we don't allow people to drive their golf cars.
No,
We did pass an ordinance this 008, and that allows for, I'm gonna mix up some terms here, OHVs and ATVs to be allowed on town streets. There are some requirements, you have to have insurance, you have to have a flag, you have to have a licensed driver, a few things, but golf carts were specifically excluded in the definition of ATVs at the time.
Okay,
Working with the Model Traffic Code 2024, the town is allowed to pass an ordinance to allow golf cars. There are 3 restrictions that must be passed. Sorry, just pull these 3 out. We basically included these 3 restrictions and then also made golf cars comply with the requirements of ATVs, which is the flag and a few other things, the speed limits. So that golf cars can be operated on town streets, just like ATVs can, along with the additional restrictions that OHVs have to follow. When they actually did define golf carts in 2008, golf cars were not defined in the model traffic code. That is a new addition to the uniform model traffic code, which we have not adopted yet. But it does define golf cart as a designated speed of less than 20 miles per hour. It's a self-built vehicle, not designed primarily for operation on roadways. It has at least 3 wheels in contact with the ground and an empty weight of no more than 1,300 pounds, and a carrying capacity of not more than 4 persons. As per statute and also model traffic code now, we are able to adopt basically roads that these golf cars can be used on. It's my understanding from 008 that we are trying to allow ATVs to be used everywhere in town, so as greatly as possible. We are not trying to allow joyriding, so we did restrict it to travel to in-town activities and businesses. That is slightly different from our neighbors on the other side of the valley. South Fork is allowing it to access trailheads and trail posts. But they also restrict joyriding, and I believe they have another term, I can't remember right now. So not trying to encourage individuals to use ATVs or HVs in town, but definitely allowing it. And then I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the 3 restrictions that are specific to golf carts.
Number 3,
That was 3A. Yes, no person shall operate a golf cart on any road, roadway, or alley of the town while carrying any person or riding in any position that may interfere with the operation or control of the golf cart or view of the operator. Every person operating the golf cart shall do so in compliance with the provisions of Article 14.5, Title 33 of Colorado Revised Statutes, and all other applicable laws in the state of Colorado and the Model Traffic Code of the town of Crestone, Colorado. C is in addition to our OHVs, every person operating a golf cart shall have on their person and be able to show proof of liability insurance for the golf cart being operated. E, the operator of a golf cart in the town shall do so only for the purposes of accessing in-town businesses and activities. E, the operator of a golf cart in town should not exceed a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. That is a slight difference from OHVs, which are allowed to be at 25 miles per hour. Or such slower speed as designated by the official traffic control device. And that is because the definition of a golf cart is limited to 20 miles an hour or less, slightly different from OHVs. F is no person shall use, drive, operate, or be a passenger on any golf cart upon any street, alley, right of way, or public property within the town of Crestone, except in accordance with the provisions of section 109. Which is our model traffic code. We added 109, 108 is our OHV ordinance in our town code. There are a few other restrictions. Basically, you have to be licensed also. So you can't be 12 years old riding a golf cart around town. You can only operate them between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. So basically trying to get it during daylight also. All the OHVs and ATVs are required to have a red flag. That is the same for golf cars. And golf cars and OHVs are not allowed to drive up and down state highways. You are allowed to cross them at a perpendicular angle, basically. You can declare a route for an OHV, but the state does not want individuals driving OHVs, golf cars up and down state highways. They are allowing you to cross them though, so. There's a small fine section, and will be part of our code once the ordinance is adopted. I did include a health and safety clause. This would be effective immediately once it's acted upon, which would allow for the use of golf carts to be used immediately, then also the fines would be in place immediately. So I believe this was in your packet. It might have been short notice, but are there any questions on this proposed ordinance? It probably will dovetail with some additional work. I would like the town to consider adopting the 2024 model traffic code, but we've got enough on our plate right now, so.
We would have, the model traffic code, adapted to our town. That's it.
Yeah, the model traffic code is published by Scott. And it was designed to be applicable for every town and every county in the state of Colorado. So on some areas, that's it's applicable to everyone. But also when you start trying to prosecute out on all traffic code or actually try to use it, I'm spending time in the office just cutting out any reference to county, cutting out any reference to city. I'm really trying to make it applicable to Crestone, which we can't do. We have to go to do so. And then we do try to provide, once it's adopted, code books for our clerk, any law enforcement that we may have, the sheriff for that one also. And we are working with, Dan came down, that's actually been a few months ago now. We had a meeting with lots of law enforcement in the San Luis Valley. We're going to make it as applicable to each town. I don't work between counties yet, applicable to each town, but also something that the sheriff can use for multiple towns that represent this. This is a perfect example, town of Saguache, the county provides law enforcement there. Town of Crestone, county provides law enforcement there. Have the model traffic codes for Saguache and Crestone be as similar as possible, so if those officers aren't trying to recreate the wheel, whenever they're writing a ticket, they see something they think is a violation, they basically have the same rules, regulations, different. So, sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. Something, but. Before us now would be adoption of ordinance number 005. Would like to be the motion made.
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 5, 2024.
Second.
No discussion, all in favor?
And I would just read that for a title only, ordinance number 005, 2024. An ordinance amending the Crestone Model Traffic Code relating to the operation of golf cars in the town of Crestone, Colorado. Now it was passed as signed by our mayor, have a copy here if the clerk needs. And once again, there are restrictions on the golf cars. It's very similar to the ATVs, slightly more so when you get into the age. License requirement. Continuing to move down in my report, you're very welcome. We did adopt the rules and regulations as proposed by San Luis Valley COG. That was ordinance 007. I think we had to amend that number, right?
Yes.
No.
2024.
I thought 007 was, the first one. It was 003.
I'm sorry, which one are we talking about?
The
water one.
The water one was
Oh, the
003.
water one's 03.
Oh, that is 003. I'm sorry, clerk. That was resolution 007, accepting the resignation and stating that the board will make an appointment. So yes, that was ordinance 03, 2024. The next proposed ordinance, I have two drafts of. This ordinance is in relation to Senate Bill 131, firearms in sensitive places. Last month, I discussed having two ordinances for consideration by the board. And if I'm gonna boil them down, the first ordinance is a blanket opt-out of Senate Bill 131. Firearms would be allowed to be carried within town hall, as they were 3 months ago. No changes. Draft 2 would have a restriction that firearms are allowed to be carried in town hall with a valid concealed carry permit by the handler. Both ordinances do not change and cannot change carrying during municipal court. And I did add a little bit of language in here that our clerk, our municipal court clerk, would be responsible for posting a notice on the door whenever court is in session, just as an added layer of notice and support that we are trying to notify the public that municipal court is in session and firearms are not allowed, even if they are concealed carry and you have a valid permit at that time. Trustee?
Does the ordinance that allows concealed carry but not open carry have a punishable by statement?
So they are both punishable through town code. And that would be section 3-8-20 of the municipal code. 3-8-20 is the current carrying of firearms in municipal buildings.
So if somebody comes in here with a shotgun in their hands, and Ariel says, you're not allowed to carry that in here. She can write them a ticket or call the sheriff.
No, she would not write them a ticket. That would be a call to the sheriff. And currently, that would be a violation of Senate Bill 131, which would be a state violation. That citation would have to come from the sheriff.
So my question with the concealed carry, if does this, if somebody comes in carrying a rifle, that's obviously not concealed. My intent of allowing people to carry a weapon would be one that was indeed a concealed carry, or that somebody who had, and somebody who had a concealed carry permit. So as I'm reading this, I'm not reading it, maybe I'm not reading it right, but, you know, if Benjamin here or our staff or someone has a concealed carry permit and they have a concealed weapon, that would be legal, but if somebody comes in with a, either a concealed weapon that was, they do not have a permit for, or carrying something like it's open carry or a rifle or something, that would be a violation. So I'm not really reading that if somebody walks in with a rifle.
Are we reading the right ordinance? And that would be title,
Yeah, there's two.
there's
Yeah,
two.
and I'm looking at the second one and,
If I could jump down to the read the fourth, the fifth, whereas the town board of Crestone also finds that the open carry of firearms in town hall has a distracting and intimidating effect upon town staff and the board's ability to govern public meetings.
so where it says, whereas the town finds the open carry of firearms in town hall has a distracting and intimidating effect. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't say that's not allowed.
So then let's move to the now therefore be it ordained by the town board, and I'm actually gonna jump to the bold language. Pursuant to the provisions of CRS 1812-105.3 4B, it shall not be a violation of CRS 1812-105.3 for any person to carry concealed a firearm in any municipal building or municipal parking lot adjacent to town buildings, as long as such persons have complied with the provisions of CRS 1812-201 et sec, which is regarding permits to carry concealed firearms. Provided further, nothing in this subsection is intended to allow firearms in those places specified, which goes into the judicial proceedings, so.
Okay,
An open carry in all public buildings prohibited.
That would be the last sentence.
yeah, that makes a little more
That's
sense.
the most clarifying sentence is the last sentence.
Well, I make a motion, we adopt ordinance number 004, 2024. The one that allows permitted concealed carry and denies open carry.
Or full opt-out, deny the full opt-out.
So that is ordinance 004, 2024, titled an ordinance of the town of Crestone. Town board regular meeting, the possession of firearms, regulating the possession of firearms in Crestone town buildings and meeting locations. And if that is the motion, I would read that ordinance in full to the record, because it is a one-page ordinance.
For a second,
I second.
So if you wouldn't mind, Mayor, whereas the Colorado General Assembly in its latest session enacted Senate Bill 24-131, which prohibits carrying firearms in sensitive places, as recognized by the United States Supreme Court in the case of New York State Rifle and Pistol v. Brown, 597 US 1, 2022. And whereas open and concealed carrying of a firearm in such spaces is prohibited, which includes certain state and local government buildings and property, buildings used for court proceedings, schools, licensed child care centers, polling places, ballot drop boxes, and other places where ballot counting and related election activities are taking place. And whereas Senate Bill 24-131 includes an opt-out provision authorizing a local government to enact an ordinance, regulation, or other law that permits a person to carry a firearm at certain local government spaces specified in the bill. And whereas the town board of Crestone recognizes that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution protects the rights of persons to keep and bear arms. And whereas the town board of Crestone also finds that the open carry of firearms in town hall has a distracting and intimidating effect on town staff and the town board's ability to govern at public meetings. Now therefore, be it ordained by the town board of the town of Crestone, Colorado, that the following subsection is added to section 13-8-20 of the Crestone Municipal Code. Section 13-8-20, carrying concealed weapons. Section C, pursuant to the provisions of CRS 18-12-1053, 4B, it shall not be a violation. I'm sorry, just to clarify, it shall not be a violation of CRS 18-12-105.3 for any person to carry concealed a firearm in any municipal building or municipal parking lot adjacent to the town buildings, as long as such persons have complied with the provisions of CRS 18-12-201 et sec. Regarding permits to carry concealed weapons, provided further, nothing in this subsection is intended to allow firearms in those cases specified in CRS 18-12-105.3(1)(c), firearms in judicial buildings or portions of town hall devoted to judicial proceedings. Open carry of firearms in all public buildings is prohibited, except for law enforcement officers. D, any person who desires to avail themselves of the concealed carry provisions of this subsection shall obtain a concealed carry permit as authorized by the provisions of CRS 18-12-201 et sec, and shall have such permit current and with them at all times while exercising their rights on town property pursuant to the above subsection C. That will be done and signed this 9th day of September 2024.
Does the building include the walkway right out there?
So that it would be included in the adjacent parking areas, in my opinion.
So, cause you know, George could stand there at the window with the AR-15 and just stare at us,
No, it's still town property.
but not town property because the road is also town properties. It's specific to the building parking area.
And the adjacent parking areas, which I think would include the sidewalk. I would say that would be the intent of the statute.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Is that eyes all around?
Fine, it's fine. Thank you again, Seth, for giving us the 2 examples.
Sorry, my packet is a little out of order here.
Our whole meeting is a little out of order now.
That is all of the attachments for the attorney's report. I do have some items to discuss in my
We
report.
also do have,
that are not listed. And I did see 2 executive sessions, yes.
I don't know if it's in your agenda, Seth, but I'd love to talk about the living wisdom thing with you.
that's,
Is that
that's
not-
why we have the executive sessions to discuss.
that's part, one of the executives,
Huh?
that's one of the
That
executive,
is the, C executive session. with the
Okay.
attorney.
great.
Well, if I may continue with my report before we move
Yeah.
to our new business. Mr. Locke and I actually had another discussion this morning, I'm sorry. I would like to propose a work session with the board to go over this amended draft that was provided to the board. Here are a few comments that were made, some items, and I have quite a bit of notes and what I considered comments after speaking with Mr. Locke and some email conversations also. So if we could get out our calendars, we have the time to do that today, just to set up a work session. I don't think that this is the time and place to really go over that. But I would like to do that also. Part of our discussion today also discussing the potential schedule. I believe his next board meeting is on the 25th. They usually meet on the third Wednesday. They will be meeting on the fourth Wednesday of this month. So we have a little bit of time. We could get them another draft. If we have any questions or comments by the 25th, a few days before, preferably, he could take that to his board on the 25th. And I really think we're getting close here. I'd like to have some decisions or some, final questions in our October meeting. Oh,
I'm sorry, this is the bottom line and sand.
yes. This was the IGA we're discussing with them.
Great. When do y'all wanna do a work session?
I was hoping to propose. Sure, everybody would like to hear, my first proposal was Friday morning
This
of this
Friday,
week.
help organize the energy fair, so
That was coming up, isn't it?
and that's this weekend. And I think that we actually have some people in this room during the energy fair. Isn't Jeff doing his podcast or something
On Saturday though.
on Saturday?
I think it was 2 days, it was the 14th and the 15th.
Saturday, Sunday, right?
Mhm. And the 13th, 15th, to Saturday, Sunday.
I will be, I don't, Friday. You guys can still do it though.
I did have some time on the morning of Thursday, the 12th, but it was fairly limited between 8 and 9 that morning.
And what about other people on Friday? How many folks can?
I have,
And it is a work session, so we will have notice, but there will be no decisions made during that session.
Thursday the 12th or Friday the 13th, are those the two choices or?
Friday I have something at 10. But Thursday, I'm pretty booked up, except the afternoon, I can make it 4.
I run setup and volunteer coordination with energy fair, so Thursday and Friday, I'm gonna be doing that.
Okay.
But
I
you know,
don't know if you heard, but I'm gonna be gone from Monday the 16th. Is it 16th? No, Monday the, yeah, 16th to the 25th.
I'm gonna have to ask where you go.
I'm going to get a surgery. I'm going on a surgical vacation. What do they call that?
That doesn't sound fun.
It'll be fun for the first 2 days.
But yes, I don't know, didn't want to cut off our conversation. I was proposing the 13th and the 12th, so.
I could do either one, but I'll be on the Zoom.
So,
I will be there also on Zoom.
12 or 13. This month, so like this Thursday and
We
Friday.
can't be there at 9 on Friday.
probably not, but I mean, if you guys schedule it for then, it just kind of depends on what is going on, but I am dead,
I don't think anyone on the board has proposed or advocated for anything that not everybody has advocated
Yeah.
for.
I don't.
So having 3 people there is really gonna be the same as having all of
That's
us.
true.
I totally trust you guys to, I think that we're on all the same page with this intergovernmental agreement, I mean, there was anything really that major and I feel like.
Well, there's
we
stuff that's
flushed
major, but there's stuff that everybody kind of is.
Well, I feel like we flushed a lot of that major stuff out at the last.
yeah, there's also cost increases in addition to. Some of the other things like giving up.
It's a work session to review the contract with water and sand.
I'm gonna be gone.
Are you?
Unfortunately.
Oh, if you're gonna have 3 of us,
I mean, I'll be right out there, so.
I mean, I have an hour, she's ready, that's starting now.
Are we gonna get email or send a copy of them?
No decisions were made, it's just a work session. So
The red line is in the packet already.
Is it anything different than what we've had prior?
There are some changes, that's what I do want to discuss. As trustee, as Lucy was stating, the current rates did increase slightly. There was some changing to the sampling. So just recap, there was a proposal that the town and Baca Grande go together on the install and purchase of a new meter. It would be a flow meter and just a flow meter. Mr. Locke did provide a proposed price, what he thought that his operator emailed him while we were talking, but that may run.
Have we been sent a copy of the?
I haven't gotten.
I have.
It's in
Is that could be
shared
upgraded?
files on your drive, if you go to your drive.
I'm going to be out of town and not able to Zoom or anything, but if I get sent a copy of that.
It's in
It's already there.
It says it's here.
You go to share,
Go to your Gmail.
go to drive, go to your drive.
You can get,
No, you can't.
you can get to your drive.
Oh,
And the idea was with their film here and us, we were gonna calibrate them both the same.
X that out.
And then we see from there, to see if we got consistent.
That's what 9 dots, the language did state. If these guys are just go together on a meter and we both share that. As and if she was out there avoiding. Maybe time board, the dealing meter or Baca Grande. He said that he doesn't have any
And then under.
opinion on that matter.
Board of Trustees binder.
If that meter that is. already purchased.
Oh, binder versus packet.
Individual.
Okay.
approval,
And
maybe,
then it's under attorney files for.
Yeah, because I was talking to Jerry or.
Attorney report now, attorney's file.
Attorney
Very
files,
hard and Diego. And they do that.
Diego does, there's usually no this one.
Yeah.
There's a few points,
This one.
There's two of them in there from the same date.
for trustees, but
What's the?
Area.
yeah, I sent both of those, I just included it.
So
Maybe both.
page 2, paragraph 5 of the old.
One is, one has the red lines, the other is like,
About the limits.
it's like the finished treatment product.
Of 60,000 gallon day. There's no mention of that in the current, in the new,
yes.
which I think works in our favor.
This one has like
If they have
The red line.
red lines, where this one is just like a straight up.
Whatever you start.
Well,
I don't mean inequalities or.
Quality.
If there's-
Yes.
If there's such a thing.
we want to send good ways for it.
And we're working on it. We are working on those.
Okay, so do people want to try to schedule it for a different week when more people can be there, or do we feel good about having? With some of us at this work session?
I'm fine. I just, all that, like, yeah, we'll have to Zoom, that's all, but I'll be there. Either day.
And so, I guess we are also cramming that down our clerks, right?
No, those are, what time did you guys decide on for Friday?
9, I have an hour, so 9,
9 AM.
if we, unless we go early.
So I guess I just would ask if the trustees, everyone can have this information reviewed.
Friday at
Put
9
it
AM.
down.
Okay.
Even those that are not present, if you'd like to email those questions in, and give those to another trustee.
Okay,
And did we decide on a specific time?
Would people rather do 8:30 to 10, 8:30 and then
I don't care.
is it better for earlier,
I'm available.
you're available? Let's do 8:30.
And he said, he said, if you can't be there and you have any questions or comments, to email them and go forward Friday.
What was the time now, 8:30?
8:30, Friday.
Friday the 13th.
Can I request our clerk send out that Zoom link? Thank you.
And post notice it.
I will
Yes.
do the 6.
So I'd like to move on, but I did want to state really my closing remarks after speaking with Mr. Locke today. Is that I'm gonna paraphrase his words. He wants the parties to have their fair share of monthly and any possible potential updates to the plan paid for. I believe I've heard the word fair share come from our board also. And And I took that as a very positive thing, not a negative, just a fair share. I don't think anybody's out to cheat, swindle, or steal in any way here. The second part was that they really do want Crestone to be their partner. And Crestone to be working to keep any foreign substances out of the system. He thinks that that's cost advantageous to the town and Boca Grande, and I definitely agree with that. We talked a lot about the potential discharge in December, but nobody can figure out where that came from. It's not that we can prevent that, but we can work to lessen those if they do occur.
Wasn't it, 2 year, not last December, but the year before that? It wasn't that, or was it something else? I thought it was one later this year.
Might have had my months mixed up. This has been a long project. So,
Yeah. Years.
So we'll set that work session. We hopefully will have some comments. We'll see what we need to go back for. And we'll hope to have that information back to Boca Grande prior to their meeting on the 25th. I did have quite a few comments just about some ongoing discussion with the county related to our IGA for road maintenance. The joint area of concern for any land use proposals, but really they're very minimal subjects, just letting the board know they're kind of ongoing, definitely kind of put on the back burner though for some of these other subjects. And we did have a agenda planning meeting to court this past week. I thought that was very helpful, things that I do want to continue. And I did supply really a very rough accounting of my time for the last 3 months. Those have been over 10 hours, definitely per month. And I am not even including what I consider quick phone calls with trustees, the mayor, the clerk. If it's a very quick phone call, something that doesn't take a lot of time, it's not worth my time to record those. But I just want to say that is the case, and I really do want to state that again, so that our clerk calls me if there's ever an issue. Feel free. I do want to answer the phone, and I'll get back to you, just like we've done with the message, and I really look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sorry, we don't have more money right now.
Well, I'm happy to do that. So with the additional items on the agenda, I believe that does bring me into my report, Mayor.
The only thing was, this executive session that is, what is it called? It's for conference with our town attorney for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS 46424B.
So moved.
And I guess I would ask for, on the record, just some additional information. It is an executive session, but I do want to provide as much information as possible so that the court, that individual would have some idea of what we are discussing in the executive session.
I would say legal questions regarding, I don't know, what you want to say, stop order that was denied with CPCH.
It's a setback dispute with the building
Setbacks.
system project.
Okay. Do you think that that would be limited to a very specific legal question? And I would not want to stray from that subject matter at all when we do go into executive session. So I do just want to make sure that we are entering that executive session with a very specific legal question in mind.
I think we have a series of legal questions regarding that
Subject
subject.
series. So if that's the case, I would just like to read our session procedures. This is for the Board of Trustees, procedures for executive sessions. A, discussions that occur in executive session shall be electronically recorded. The electronic recording shall reflect the actual content of the discussion in executive session. The sole exception to this requirement is that no electronic recording shall be required to be kept of that portion of an executive session that constitutes an attorney-client communication in the opinion of the town attorney and those in attendance with the executive session and upon following the procedures and announcement of 3. B, An electronic recording device shall be tested before going into executive session to determine whether it is operating. In the event the electronic recording device is unavailable or not operating, the town board shall not convene an executive session until an operating recording device is available. C, upon completion of the executive session, if tape recording is used, the tape shall be labeled with Board of Trustees executive session, the date, and initialed or signed by the presiding officer, which would be the mayor. And if a digital recording is used, the file recording of the executive session shall be saved to a secure confidential storage location, and the file shall be labeled with Board of Trustees executive session on the date. D, executive session minutes kept by electronic recording device shall stand approved with no further action. If additional written minutes are taken, they shall be approved at a future executive session. E, the electronic recording and any written minutes of the executive session shall be maintained by the town attorney, or if the town attorney was in the subject of the executive session and did not participate in the executive session, through the recording and any written minutes of the executive session, they shall be maintained by the presiding officer or the town clerk. F, the electronic recording and any written minutes of the executive session shall be maintained for 90 days after the date of the executive session and shall not be disclosed to any person except by law. So there was a motion to go into executive session. We do have to have a 2/3 quorum.
So I made the motion, or did Adam make the motion?
I made the motion.
Second,
Second.
any discussion about it? All in favor?
Aye.
So that was over our 3.3 requirement. And that motion would be, I may just read that. I move to go into executive session for the conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on a specific legal question under CRS section 24-6-402 that being legal advice on a specific legal question related to the
Setback dispute.
with
CPCH on rural residential.
And the PUD.
as stated or occurring on September 9th, 2024. So as the presiding officer, mayor, would you read announcement number 1, please?
It is 3:40. It's it's September 9th, 2024, and the time is 3:39. For the record, I'm the presiding officer, Benjamin Byer. As required by the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present is trustee Oglesby, trustee Pazlusny, attorney Seth Walker, trustee Kinney, trustee Lakai, and clerk Ariel Blackwell, and me, Mayor Benjamin Byer. This is an executive session for the following purposes: legal conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-6-402-4B regarding setback infringement on rural residential property by CPCH under planned unit development zoning ordinance. I caution each participant to confine all discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session, and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. If at any point in the executive session, any participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I may just ask that we check the recording device that is working.
It is working.
We're gonna stop this one.
That's what I have a question for you. I
Okay.
have a separate meeting that we could use, like a separate Zoom link.
Is there anyone on Zoom that is part of the board?
There's no one on Zoom there's no one on Zoom.
I would ask that the Zoom link be shut down during the executive session.
Okay.
And still be recorded separate?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll still have to record just in a separate Zoom link.
So you would like me to switch to the new Zoom, or should I can cut this out of the recording? The regular meeting too.
Well, I believe that would be a question you can answer. I would just want to confirm that anyone on Zoom is not privy to the information that we are discussing.
There's nobody on Zoom.
There's no one, on Zoom.
But I would not,
and no one can enter without my permission, without letting him out of the meeting room.
Okay, can you just confirm that we are recording the meeting currently?
Can you confirm that it is currently being recorded?
I believe that is what I need to know.
however,
Yeah.
I would separate it because if for some reason this recording, you know, as a whole got.
I think that could be advisable. That would be a determination that the clerk.
Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. I think we should set this one down.
That way it's not even part of that previous meeting.